everyone, it's me and this is my labor and delivery story. When I first started noticing that I was going to have Jacob soon was actually a week before he was born. He had dropped so low and we're starting this out like so gross. So gross. He dropped so low and I had diarrhea the whole day. Couldn't go anywhere. It's so gross and I've never had that before in my entire life. Like, that's one thing that nobody tells you that happens when the baby drops. He just squirts everything out of you. That happened on a Friday. I remember that day very well. So that was Friday, and then I started having Braxton Hicks contractions that next Sunday. We went furniture shopping for Jacob's rocking chair. And we went to a couple of stores and it was constantly sitting on chairs and standing up, sitting down, standing up. For pretty much the whole day I was very active and I was having the Braxton Hicks contractions that entire day. And I really feel like that's what kickstarted my labor, was that walk and just pretty much doing like squats all day. I had my next appointment that Tuesday. And when I went, she checked me and she said that I was at a 2 and that the baby's head was so low. Like right away, she was like, whoa, he's low. And I was like, I know, I can feel it. I feel where his head is. And like if I'm going upstairs, like I literally have to like pull his head back up because it's uncomfortable. That was on the 23rd of December. And she's like, I'm making you an appointment for next week, but you're not going to make it. She said, I would be so surprised if you made it to that next appointment. And she said, fingers crossed, you might have a Christmas baby. And I was like, oh no, I don't want a Christmas baby. My real contractions actually started Christmas Eve. I thought that I was going to have a Christmas baby. So Christmas rolled around and my contractions were still pretty far apart. They were probably around 20 minutes apart. I lasted through the day on Christmas, going through contractions, and then that night, Christmas night, that was Thursday, they started getting stronger and closer together. So they were around 10 to 13 minutes apart. Since I had never been in labor before, I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea how long it could go. So I really thought that since I started contractions the day prior, that all of a sudden I was going to have this baby. And I didn't want to have him on Christmas. I love my midwives so much, and they have kids, and my favorite midwife, Sarah, she actually has a son and 2 toddler twin daughters. So knowing that, you don't want to go to labor and call them into work on Christmas. Like, that's so sad. I didn't want to do that to her. But, you know, I can't like tell them to not come. If you're going into labor soon, don't time your contractions, especially if they're so far apart. Just don't do it. So I did not sleep that night, and I was very tired and stressed out and emotional and scared. Like, I was so scared. And I lasted through the night. Like, he did not come Christmas. And it was the next day. Kurt decided not to go to work. That was Friday, the 26th. And I was still timing my contractions like crazy that morning. They're around 7 minutes apart that morning, and I was just like timing them and timing them, and I was like obsessed with timing them. So dumb. Once they hit 5 minutes apart, I was like, oh my gosh, they're 5 minutes apart, gotta get to the hospital. Not even thinking that you started having contractions 2 days ago and it's taken 2 days to get to the point where they're 5 minutes apart. Chill out, Hannah. Apparently you're just a really slow laborer. And I should have realized that, but of course I was so sure that this baby's just gonna like pop right out of me. And once I hit 5 minutes apart, I called my midwife again, and she's like, okay, I guess you can go to the hospital if you want to, or the birthing center. And so I'm like all excited that she said that we could go to the hospital. At the time, I was not fitting into my coat. I was wearing my husband's coat, and it's huge. Like when I wear it, I just look like this huge black marshmallow thing, and you can't tell that I'm pregnant. It just looks like I'm wearing this huge coat. We went to the emergency room, and Kurt dropped me off at the door. I walk into the emergency room, and Kurt goes to go park the car, so I'm all alone there. The lady at the counter did not really ask me why I was there. She just handed me a form. I was filling out the form, and she like leans over the counter because I'm sitting there filling out this form, and she's like, are your parents with you? And I'm like, no. And she's like, do you want me to call someone? And I was like, no, my husband's parking the car. On the form, it says reason why you're in, and I wrote, I'm in labor. And then the lady, she's like, are you almost done? Do you need help? Like, she really thought that I was a kid. She comes over and like kind of like looks over my shoulders to make sure that I'm doing it right. And she sees that I wrote, I'm in labor, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're in labor, why didn't you say something? And I was like, I don't know, I've never done this before. And then she ran and called someone to come and get me and wheel me to the birthing center. So then on out, it was just like a waiting game, and I was still around 5 minutes apart. And so that was pretty much like the whole day was like that, and it was very painful. My water had not broken yet. Once it got later in the day, she let me get in the tub because I was in a lot of pain. The contractions were so bad. Like, it gets to that point where like, oh my gosh, I cannot stand another second of this. And then it goes away, and then you're like, oh, no pain. The whole day was like that. I was definitely tired and just like moaning and like not cool. All day my contractions were really bad. They were probably around 4 minutes apart, and just really bad, and I was exhausted. I had been awake pretty much for 2.5 days. Friday night were very close together. They were probably then getting around 3 minutes apart, and they were extremely painful. I was like delusional, and I couldn't do anything, and it was really bad. Did you just wake up? You can see his smile. He's too focused on his pinky. Where was I? So it was Friday night, or I should say past midnight. I was trying so hard to go all natural, and I was just like at my point where I was just so exhausted, and I was like completely out of it. I just really didn't think that I could take it anymore. I told Kurt, I was like, I can't do it. I cannot do it. And so he went to the nurse, and he asked, or the midwife, and he asked her if I could have something, some pain medication or anything, just to help me sleep in between my contractions, because I wasn't able to sleep anymore in between. It was like pain all the time. There were no more breaks. She made sure that I was sure, but even though she definitely promotes going all natural, she looked at my condition and said that she definitely thought that it was okay for me to have something. So they put an IV in, It started with a P, and I want to say Pitocin, but she let me know that it was only going to last around 2 hours, and it's going to jumpstart my labor. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I can't take any more of this. 2-hour break, and then right into labor. Sounds fantastic. She put it in the IV, but then she also gave me a shot in my butt. Pretty much right away, I felt drugged up, and I laid down and I rested finally. And it's funny because I had been timing all of my contractions so much that when I passed out, my dreams were me timing my contractions. Probably from like 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. I got to rest. And then once it started to wear off and my contractions started getting stronger and stronger and more close together, that's when I really felt like I needed to push. And it was full on, like, everybody hands on, get this baby out. They had me moving around everywhere. I was in the shower, I was on this stool thing, I was hanging off the bed, in between Kurt's legs like this. I was back on the bed. I was on all fours. I was just all over the place, and it was a long time, like really long, and I kept pushing, and just he was not coming out, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like he's not coming out, and then I was so like distressed, and I couldn't take it anymore. Like it had been so long. Like this is Saturday, and I started having contractions Wednesday. Hey, what are you doing? Don't do that. So this is very early Saturday morning, and finally the nurse, she gets a mirror, and she puts the mirror down there, and I could see his head, and she's like, look how close he is. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's right there. That's his head. Like, and it just like blew my mind. And she was like, you can do this. Like, he's right there. He's so close. And I was like, yeah, he's so close. Like, I can do this. It was so much pain. They talk about the ring of fire, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's the ring of fire. Like, it felt like a ring of fire. Then it gets worse. Like, I can't tell you how many times that happened. I'm like, this is the worst pain I've ever been in my life. I can't take anymore. Then it gets worse, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can take more. Like, what's going on? He's so close, and he's still not coming out. Like, I'm pushing so hard, and he's still not coming out. And then finally, my midwife is like, oh my gosh. And she says something to the nurse, and the nurse runs out of the room. And she was only gone a second. Like, it was so fast. She ran out, and more nurses and another doctor run in. I think that if I was a little bit more like coherent, I would have wondered what was going on. But to me, I was so out of it and in pain, a little bit still drugged up, and I just, what are you doing? Are you trying to get in trouble? Are you trying to get in trouble? So they run into the room, and a nurse grabs my leg, and then they counted. They were like, okay, Hannah, when we count to 3, you're gonna push. And I said, okay. And they're like, this is the push. This is the biggest push. Like, this is what's gonna get your baby out. And I was like, okay, okay. And they counted to 3, and I pushed, and the lady did this thing with my hip, and she pushed on my belly, and she probably got my hip out of socket, honestly. And then another lady was in there getting Jacob, and he came out. And usually in the birthing center, they very much promote him going straight onto you and getting 45 minutes of skin-to-skin time. which a lot of hospitals do that, and I was really looking forward to that. But when they got him out, instead of letting like Kurt do the umbilical cord or anything like that, they clipped it right away, and they took him over to the infant bed. And that was really scary to just have them like whisk him away like that. And it turned out that his coloring was off. I don't know if he was just blue or all pale or something like that, but his coloring was off, and that's what they told us. But they just took him over there and rubbed him real good, and his coloring came back right away, and he was perfectly fine. He was only gone a minute, and then they brought him back to me. While that's happening, I was trying to tell Kurt to go over and check on him, but Kurt was very emotional at the time because it was a long process to get Jacob out. And just witnessing it, like once Jacob came out, like Kurt had been being strong for me and just like taking care of me. So once Jacob came out, like Kurt was able to just like really process exactly what happened. And like he was definitely overwhelmed, and all of my midwife and nurse were able to stay with me, and the doctor and 2 other nurses were over with Jacob. So he had a lot of people taking care of him, so I really wasn't too worried. We were in a birthing center. He was still in our room. He's right there. But then when my placenta came out, I started to bleed, and I bled a lot. And that was one of the biggest problems. I was very out of it still, so I didn't realize how big of a deal it was when I just started bleeding everywhere. And it was a big deal. And they had to hurry up and give me a shot of something to help stop the bleeding. I don't know. Okay, so Jacob was there, but I was bleeding. That was a big deal. It was a lot of blood. He was finally here, and that was amazing that he finally came out. So his coloring came back really fast, and they brought him back to me and put him right on my chest. He cried a little bit, but he seemed pretty happy. His face was definitely squished, probably just from being so low for so long. He had like a cone head. And now his head is so round, so it's funny to think that he's got such a round head. So I actually had ripped myself. Well, Jacob ripped me. So I did have to get stitches, and how they do it, it's gonna sound gross, but so you rip, say you rip like this. This is you. This is your skin on top, and it rips like this open. How they sew it up is they actually start sewing this down here, and then they sew a little bit more, and then they sew a little more till you're fully shut. So it isn't just like them it isn't like them just putting your skin back together and sewing the top layer. Like they literally go like that. So it took a long time for her to sew me up, and it was pretty painful, and I was still just in a lot of pain from having a baby. But having Jacob on my chest then, and just like looking at his face, like made everything else just go away. And it's so interesting how during the labor process I was like, wow, like I can't have any more kids. And it just like broke my heart to think that like I'm not gonna have any more kids because this was that bad. And then he came out, and I was like, okay, I could do that again. So he was born on December 27th, 9:15 a.m. He was 7 pounds, 6 ounces, and 20.5 inches long. He was so healthy. He had chubby cheeks already, and he was already happy. The poor guy was probably awake as long as I was, just being squished. So he was nice, and he slept pretty much the whole day and whole night, that first day and night. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope that if anybody's watching this and they're going to labor the first time, kind of gives you a little bit of a heads up of what to expect. Of course, every labor is different. I still, even though it was really bad, I still thank God that I didn't have to get a C-section. Alright, thanks for watching everybody. Have a great day.